So, how many of you have been to Bangalore? Okay, wow. And how many of you think that besides Bombay, Bangalore is one of the cities in India which is livable? Okay, yeah. Because even I think so. And I think it has a great vibe. There is theatre culture, there is an art scene. People are, coming from all over the country to live in Bangalore, well educated. So, yes, even I think that if I have to live in another city besides Bombay, it would be Bangalore. Now, my job in theatre takes me all across the country. And last year in April, we were touring Bangalore with one of our shows. Two of them were for the Azim Premji University, and the third one was open to the public at this lovely eco-friendly venue called the Atelier. Now, Atelier is located a bit outside the city. It's a road which is like a highway called the Sarjapur Road. And when you're heading outside Bangalore on Sarjapur Road and you take a right inside a lane, about 500 meters ahead is the Atelier. And we had a show at about 6:30 in the evening. We were setting up in the morning. Now, I was the production manager of the show, and my job is to make sure that all the props and the costumes are in place and the actors are well fed. Basically, I was the mother of the show. Now, while we were setting up in the afternoon, one of the actors comes up to me and says that the prop that he uses in one of the scenes, the Rubik's Cube, is not on his desk. Then we went through all the bags and we could not find the Rubik's Cube. So I called on to my assistant and I asked him if he had packed it the previous day. So he was a young boy and clearly irresponsible, and he didn't even remember whether he had or he hadn't. So I was very disappointed with him. It was a Sunday and that entire area, the shops were shut. So we had to find the Rubik's Cube somehow because it was an important part of the scene. I asked the owner of Atelier where I could find a Rubik's Cube on a Sunday. So he suggested this shop called Aishwarya. And he said I might find it there. He wasn't sure. So I decided to go for a hunt of the Rubik's Cube because I didn't trust my assistant enough. I walked out of the venue. It was afternoon at about 3 o'clock. I walked slowly, so it would take me 10 minutes to get to the main road to find an auto rickshaw to get to Aishwarya. Now, I didn't even want to go to Aishwarya. I wanted to find it at whatever shop available closest to the venue so that I could come back in time for the show. I stepped out of the gate and turned left to walk towards the main road. And just there, I see an auto rickshaw. So the auto rickshaws in Bangalore are green and yellow in color, and they are a bit larger in size. This one was the color of our Bombay auto rickshaws, black and yellow, and it was a little smaller. It didn't have a driver in it. So I looked around. There was a group of boys, men, at the nearby biri shop. So I pointed to them like, does this rickshaw belong to any of you? And one of them walked ahead. So he was a young boy, about 22 years old, short, stout and dark, with a lot of hair on his head. And he was unkempt, he hadn't had a haircut. And I said, will you take me to the main road and bring me back as well? And I have to just go close by about half a kilometer and we'll be back. And he agreed. I agreed to give him 50 rupees. He agreed to that as well. And I decided to get inside the rickshaw, but the seat was covered in a layer of dust. So it had clearly not been sat on for a very long time. And I pointed to it, requesting him to clean it up so that I could sit. He didn't have a cloth to wipe it, so he just went swish, swish, swish in like circular motion with his hand, which obviously didn't clear the dust. And I was wearing white pants, not the smartest thing to do for a production manager on show day. But, well, I sat down on the edge of the seat and held on to the railing, his seat, the railing on his seat, and we moved ahead with our journey. It was a very noisy rickshaw, much noisier than the regular ones. But well, I just had to do what I had to do. We moved ahead, went on to the main road, turned left towards the shops. So I did not want to go to Aishwarya. So every time a shop would come which looked like it might have a Rubik's Cube or a toy shop or a stationery shop, I would just go like, Roko, 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 stop, stop, stop. And he would stop. I would jump out, run to the shop, and come back disappointed because they didn't have the Rubik's Cube. So we did this for about 10 or 12 times. And by then, he was definitely getting very impatient. So was I, but I couldn't stop. And finally, we reached Aishwarya. And it turned out to be a supermarket. They didn't have the Rubik's Cube. And he finally asked me, कि madam, क्या चाहिए आपको? What are you looking for? Now, I did not know how to explain a Rubik's Cube to this auto rickshaw driver. So I said, I need a toy which can be found at a stationery or a toy shop. So if you know somebody, then please tell me. Otherwise, we were just approaching the big main market of Sarjarpur Road where shops were open on a Sunday. And he said, oh yes, I know where you can find this. And he pointed to the opposite direction from where we had come to the same side on the opposite side. So then I said, okay, fine, he knows better, he's from here. He took a U-turn and started to drive in the opposite direction. And he drove really fast, like faster, much faster than earlier. And because obviously he didn't have to stop anymore, he just had to go straight to the shop and help me out. He must have driven about 3 or 4 kilometers. And by then, I was getting impatient because the shop was not coming. And I kept asking him, you know, how much further, or kitna dur, and he would keep saying, bas here, right here, just there, like he would just keep saying right here, and he would keep going really fast. Finally, he turned left from the main highway and went into a smaller lane. I still kept asking where, how much further, and I'm also like tired and I want to find the Rubik's Cube and get back in time. While driving, when you are sitting in the rear seat, you can see the driver in the rear view mirror. Now, if you can see the driver can see you also. So it's like that. And I could see him looking at me. And through that mirror, he spoke to me through the mirror saying that, madam, आपके यहाँ पे गले में कुछ black है, कुछ काला काला, you have something here. And I found that weird. And I said, okay, कोई बात नहीं, let it be, आप गाड़ी चलाओ, आप जल्दी चलो. And finally, we reached this vast space where there was just one road. There was one shop, then there was a grassland, then there was another shop. So like we were completely outside the city. We still kept going. And I was still hopeful. We even crossed the railway crossing. So like now though we had gone completely outside Bangalore. And finally we reached a lane where there were bungalows on both sides. Really beautiful bungalows. And no shops, of course. And at the end of the lane there was a dead end. There was no shop, there was no house, and there was only open grassland. That's it. I lost it. And I asked him one final time, Bhaiya, shop kidhar hai? Where is the shop? And he said, madam, udhar. And he pointed out to some trees like half a kilometer ahead, which was ridiculous. So this was it for me. I again said, stop, roko. And I think by instinct, he just stopped the auto rickshaw. And I jumped out. I ran to the nearest gate and I held on to it. I could hear a dog barking inside. So I knew that if something went wrong, I could make noise and the dog would definitely make more noise and help would arrive. So I stayed there and I just looked at him straight in the eye and I said, Abhi tum yahan se niklo. Just get out. Nikal jao idhar se. He looked at me for a second and he turned and he left. He didn't ask me for money. He didn't question me. Which meant that this was it for him. And I didn't know what else to do next. I did not know where I was. I did not know how to get back. It was completely deserted. I did not see any people around me. And while standing there, I'm trying to find my Google location. And I was trying to book myself an Uber. And just when I open my Uber app, it wants me to verify myself. If Uber was a man, I would have punched him in the face. And while I'm doing this, I don't know, it's like, your just heart is racing and you just don't know what to do next. I first thing called up my light man to inform the director what had happened, and it would take me longer than expected to get back. And just then, while I'm doing all this, I hear the sound of the rickshaw again. There was a bush next to me, and through the leaves, I could see the rickshaw coming back. But he turned around and left again, and the sound of the rickshaw faded. So he was waiting for me to start walking back, maybe, I don't know. And I stood there, wondering what to do next. I see the gate open next to me, the neighboring gate. It opened and a black Maruti Esteem came out. And a lady was standing there in her nightie, waving bye to the people in the car. And I ran to her. I said, please stop the car. She did. There was her husband and her young son in the car, and I narrated what had happened to me. And I requested them if they could drop me to the main road, then I could find a vehicle back to where I came from. So they gave me a ride, and the man was asking me if I see to tell him if I see the rickshaw, I must inform him. But I did not see the rickshaw again. He dropped me to the main Sarjapur road. I found a green and a yellow auto rickshaw, which took me back to the same main market which we had almost reached earlier. I found a sports shop, bought my Rubik's Cube, got back to Atelier just in time for the show. Now, I never thought that my story was worth telling to an audience because nothing really happened. Okay, I was safe. That guy couldn't do anything to me. I was lucky. I didn't even have to do anything. But last year, I was in Berlin and at an open mic event. Now, to enter an open mic event, the audience had to pay €5, but the performers had to go in for free. So I decided that I will tell this story to save €5. But when I told this story to that audience, everyone listened with horror-struck eyes. And they even applauded to the part when I finally reached the venue and made it in time for the show. So that's the difference between the reaction of people outside the country and here. In India, nothing really happened to me. People go through far worse than what I did. And that's the saddest part about the story. Thank you.